Usually when we think about gravity,
Mm-hmm.
we picture something pretty simple, like a heavy bowling ball sitting in the middle of a trampoline.
Right, just weighing the whole thing down.
Exactly. And you roll a marble past it, and the marble naturally dips toward the heavier object. It's predictable. It's just, physics. Mass attracts mass.
Yeah, the classic textbook example.
But then if you look at the actual solar system, it's not just one bowling ball and one marble on a flat surface.
Oh, not at all.
It's dozens of planets, moons, asteroids, all pulling on each other, constantly shifting the center of gravity in this incredibly complex, never-ending cosmic dance.
Which is a mathematical nightmare to map out, by the way.
Totally. Predicting exactly where that marble is going to go becomes a massive multivariable headache. Now imagine that bowling ball isn't just pulling on space rocks.
Okay.
Imagine it is actively pulling on your ego, your daily luck, and, well, the very way people perceive your charisma when you walk into a room.
That's a wild thought.
Right. But that gravitational tension, that complex cosmic dance, is exactly what classical predictive astrology attempts to map out for you. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we are taking a stack of seriously dense, classical astrological source material and extracting the golden nuggets regarding a very specific, highly influential set of planetary combinations. We're talking about the solar yogas.
Yeah, and we're looking exclusively at the combinations formed by the sun today.
Which is huge,
Oh.
because in this specific tradition, the sun isn't just, a star providing light and heat.
No, it is the absolute gravitational center of the self. It is the anchor of the individual soul.
The core of who you are.
Exactly. Every other planet is essentially just responding to the sun's placement in your chart.
Before we jump into the specific combinations, though, we need to clarify some terminology for you. Because when a lot of people hear the word yoga,
They think of gym mats.
yes, downward dog, warrior pose, stretching in a hot room.
Yeah.
But in this classical text, yogas are not physical postures at all.
Right, no stretching involved here.
They are very specific planetary combinations.
The root of the word yoga in Sanskrit actually means to yoke, or to join, or to combine.
So it's about connection.
Exactly. The text we're drawing from defines these astrological yogas as specific planetary combinations that indicate, well, a summation of inherited physical and psychological tendencies.
Which directly condition your present environment, right?
Yes. They act as a sort of cosmic blueprint. They detail the potential energy you were born with.
But the text is also very quick to point out a crucial distinction, and I think this filters out a lot of amateur astrology.
Oh, definitely.
Because while all yogas are combinations of planets, not all combinations rise to the dignity of a yoga.
Right. Just having two planets in the same sector of the sky doesn't mean they're actually doing anything special.
They aren't automatically generating a specific result.
No, they have to form a recognized, mathematically specific relationship to actually be called a yoga.
Which brings us to the math. Because before we can even begin to look at the sun and these solar yogas, you absolutely must understand how to measure a yoga's strength.
This is the foundational rule. You can't just look at a chart, see two planets next to each other, and conclude, oh, this person is going to be a billionaire.
Right, it doesn't work that way.
Classical astrology requires a rigorous point system to determine if the yoga is actually powerful or if it's just a faint whisper in the background of your life.
And this point system completely upends how most people understand basic astrology.
It really does.
Because the common pop astrology view is that certain planets are just inherently good and certain planets are inherently bad.
Like Jupiter is the planet of luck, so it's always good.
Yeah, and Saturn is the planet of restriction, so it's always bad. But this text says it is not that simple.
Not at all. The planet's nature is actually divided into three types. Benefic, which means good, malefic, which means challenging or difficult, and neutral.
But this isn't just based on their natural state.
No, it is entirely based on your specific ascendant. That's the sign rising on the eastern horizon when you were born. And it depends on the specific houses those planets rule in your chart.
So it's relative to you.
Exactly. This is the foundational rule that dictates everything we are about to discuss today.
So let's break down that point system from the text.
Okay, so the planets causing the yoga are called the yoga karakas. And let's explore the math here. Positive units, or +1 points, are awarded if the yoga karaka is a benefic lord for your specific ascendant.
Okay, that makes sense.
You also get a +1 if the planet is physically associated with a benefic lord, if it's being aspected, which means looked at by one,
Yeah.
or if it's sitting in its exalted or friendly sign.
So it's about who it's hanging out with and where it's sitting.
Right. And the negative units, the -1 points, work the exact same way but in reverse.
So you get a -1 if the planet causing the yoga is a malefic lord for your specific chart.
Yep. And you get another -1 if it's hanging out with other malefic lords, if it's aspected by a malefic, or if it happens to be in debilitation or sitting in an enemy's sign.
To ground this in reality, the text provides a really clear example of how a naturally good planet can become a functional bad guy.
The Jupiter example.
Yeah, let's look at Jupiter. Naturally, it is considered the greatest benefic in the solar system.
The ultimate good guy.
But if your ascendant is Capricorn, Jupiter mathematically rules the 3rd and 12th houses of your chart.
And because it governs those specific houses which are associated with struggle and loss for a Capricorn ascendant, Jupiter actually functions as a malefic lord.
So it gets a negative point.
Exactly.
It's like finding out the nicest guy in your office, the one who always brings donuts, is actually the corporate spy sent to downsize your department.
That is a perfect analogy. His inherent nature is pleasant, but his functional role in your ecosystem is destructive.
So as an astrologer, you basically tally up all these positive and negative units.
Right. If the positive units predominate, the planet will give mostly beneficial results.
And if the negative units win out?
Then that technically good yoga might not do much for you at all. It might even actively cause harm.
Which explains why two people can have the exact same yoga on paper, but have entirely different life outcomes.
The underlying strength dictates the reality. It's all in the math.
Okay, with that foundational math established, let's look at how the planets actually dance around the gravitational center of the ego.
Let's get into the sun.
This brings us to our first specific solar combination, Vesi Yoga. Sometimes it's spelled Vesi with an H.
Right, Vesi Yoga.
What exactly are the mechanical conditions for this to occur? Let's unpack this.
The definition provided by the source material is very strict. Vesi Yoga occurs when planets occupy the second house from the sun.
Okay, so the house right next door.
Yes, moving forward. However, there is a major exclusion rule here. This applies to any planet other than the Moon, Rahu, and Ketu.
So if they're in the second house, they don't count.
They absolutely do not cause Vesi Yoga.
Let's stop right there and explain why. The moon I sort of understand, because it is its own luminary, its own center of gravity for the mind. But what are Rahu and Ketu?
Right,
And why are they excluded from this solar interaction?
Well, Rahu and Ketu are not physical planets with mass. They are the mathematical lunar nodes.
In nodes, okay.
Yeah, they are the exact points in space where the orbit of the moon intersects the ecliptic plane of the sun. They're the points where solar and lunar eclipses occur.
So they aren't physical objects you can touch.
Right. Ancient texts refer to them as shadow planets. And because they have no physical mass, they cannot reflect the sun's light. They can't capture the solar energy and project it forward. Therefore, they can't participate in these specific solar yogas, which completely rely on the physical reflection and modification of the sun's literal and metaphorical light.
That makes a lot of sense. So to have Vesi Yoga, we are looking for physical bodies, like Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn, sitting in the house right next door to the sun, moving forward in the zodiac order.
Exactly. So if the sun is in Aries, we are looking for these planets in Taurus.
Okay, so what does having this specific setup actually do for you? What's the result?
Well, the predictive effects depend entirely on our point system. We have to see whether the planets causing the yoga are benefics or malefics.
Back to the math.
Always back to the math. If it's formed by benefic planets like Jupiter or Venus, it's categorized as Vesi Yoga. And the text explicitly states that a person with Vesi will be fortunate, happy, virtuous, famous, and aristocratic.
Aristocratic, that's an interesting word choice. It implies a certain grace, right? An elevated status or bearing in society.
Yeah, it's not just about having money, it's about how you carry yourself, your aura.
But if the planets in the second house from the sun are malefics, like Saturn or Mars,
then it becomes Vesi Yoga, and the text warns that the results are the exact reverse.
Oh boy.
Yeah, instead of fortune and virtue, you might see struggle, a tendency toward unethical behavior, or, a lack of a good reputation.
This brings us right back to the nuance of the point system. You can't just spot Vesi Yoga in your chart and demand a crown.
Exactly. You have to see who is actually causing it.
And the text gives an amazing illustrative example of how conflicting planetary natures resolve in real time.
Yeah, the text presents a really fascinating hypothetical case to prove this exact point. Imagine a chart with a Cancer ascendant.
Okay, Cancer rising.
In this specific chart, the sun is exalted, meaning it's in its position of maximum astronomical and astrological power, which is the sign of Aries.
And for a Cancer ascendant, Aries falls in the 10th house, the house of career and public life.
Exactly. Now let's place Venus in Taurus. Taurus is the 11th house, which is exactly one house away, the second house from the sun in Aries.
Okay, so we have Venus in the 2nd house from the sun. That confirms a Vesi Yoga.
Yes.
And Venus is a natural benefic, so it is a Vesi Yoga.
Correct.
But astrology is full of complex relationships, and the sun and Venus are natural enemies.
They do not get along.
The king and the artist naturally butt heads. So how does the text reconcile a good yoga being formed by two planets that inherently dislike each other?
That tension is exactly why this example is in the text. You have a yoga being formed by enemies. However, the text explains that because the sun is exalted and incredibly strong, and Venus is in Taurus, which is its own home sign and therefore also incredibly strong, the Vesi Yoga becomes supremely powerful.
Oh, wow.
The sheer inherent mathematical strength of the planets completely overrides their natural enmity.
So because they are both so capable and dignified in their own right, they kind of put aside their personal differences and just produce amazing results.
Exactly. It's like two brilliant professionals who hate each other but still manage to build a billion-dollar company together.
That's a great way to put it. And the text notes that these good results don't just happen all the time, they find full play during their specific planetary time periods, the dasas and bhuktsis.
Right. To clarify for you listening, dasas and bhuktsis are the chronological time activation systems in classical astrology.
Your chart is a static map, but the dasa system is the clock ticking forward.
Yes, activating different planets at different decades of your life. So this supremely powerful Vesi Yoga just sits there as potential energy until the Venus or sun time periods activate it.
And at that point, the aristocratic fortune just manifests.
Exactly.
The text also provides an actual case study to prove this, known as Chart 18. Let's walk you through how a multi-planet Vesi Yoga works.
Okay, so in Chart 18, we have an Aquarius ascendant. The sun is positioned in the 7th house, which is the sign of Leo.
Okay, now in the 8th house, which is the sign of Virgo, and crucially, the 2nd house from the sun, we have a cluster of 3 planets: Mars, Mercury, and Venus.
That is a very crowded 2nd house from the sun, a 3-planet Vesi Yoga.
How do you even parse the effects when you have a mixed bag of planets like that? Mars is a malefic, Venus and Mercury are benefics.
Well, we evaluate each of these yoga karakas independently. The text points out that Mars is actually the least powerful here.
Why is that?
Mathematically, Mars is nearly 29 degrees away from the sun in this chart. It is physically at the very edge of the sign, about to move into the next one, which makes its influence incredibly weak.
Ah, so it's barely in the room.
Right. Therefore, Mercury and Venus function as the primary drivers of this yoga.
And because this whole yoga is happening in relationship to the sun in the 7th house, which governs partnerships, marriage, and public dealings, the text concludes that the person is generally fortunate in all functions of the 7th house.
The yoga expresses itself primarily through the specific area of life where the sun is anchored.
Taking a step back to look at the geometry of this, the 2nd house from any planet represents where its energy flows next.
Right.
Is the immediate future, the resources it has at its disposal, the things it speaks into existence.
That's the psychological reality of the 2nd house, yes.
So if the sun represents the soul, or the core ego of the individual, having planets in the 2nd house from it is like having an advanced guard.
I like that.
Is Vesi Yoga essentially a herald that walks in front of the king, announcing your arrival to the world?
That analogy maps perfectly. Having benefic planets there is exactly like having a royal procession paving the way. Your ego, your core self, arrives in situations preceded by good fortune, charm, or intellect, depending on the planets involved.
So people perceive you positively before you even take action.
Exactly. Your reputation precedes you in the best way possible.
But let me push back on that for a second. In Chart 18, we had 3 planets. What if one of those planets was a heavy, dignified malefic, like Saturn?
Okay.
If Vesi is the herald, and you add a highly dignified, restrictive Saturn to the mix of Mercury and Venus, doesn't the astrologer have to completely alter the prediction? Does the herald suddenly have a severe, intimidating attitude?
Yes, you absolutely must moderate the prediction based on the point system. If Saturn is numerically stronger than Venus in that specific chart, the herald is indeed going to present a much more serious, delayed, or frustrating introduction to the world.
The good influences are moderated.
Right. The ego is still announced, but perhaps with a warning label attached, like, here comes the king, and he is not in a good mood.
So if the second house is the energy we are walking into, what about the energy we are leaving behind? That brings us to the other side of the sun. Vasi Yoga, sometimes translated as Vesi Yoga.
Right, Vasi Yoga, a geometric mirror image of Vesi. It is formed when planets, again, strictly excluding the moon, Rahu, and Ketu, occupy the 12th house from the sun.
So if the sun is in Aries, we are looking for planets in Pisces, the sign immediately preceding it.
Exactly.
What are the textual outcomes for a Vasi Yoga where benefic planets occupy this space?
The outcomes listed in the source are quite lovely, actually. The subject will be happy, prosperous, liberal in their mindset, and crucially, they will be the favorite of the ruling classes.
Favorite of the ruling classes, that is deeply specific.
You're very specific.
And I assume if we put malefics back there in the 12th house, it becomes Papavasi, and the prosperity dries up.
Precisely. If malefics are present in the 12th from the sun, the results are reversed. The prosperity is hindered, the liberal mindset might turn rigid or fearful, and you're certainly not winning favor with anyone in power.
Now, the 12th house in a standard astrological chart is notoriously difficult.
Oh, yes. It's a dhisthana.
Right, an evil house. It is the house of loss, of isolation, of hidden enemies, hospitals, prisons. It is the realm of the subconscious and the unseen.
Not exactly a fun place.
So why would having planets in a house of loss create prosperity and make you a favorite of the ruling classes? That seems like a contradiction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, when beneficial planets surround the sun in this specific relative position, it doesn't trigger the typical loss associated with the 12th house.
Okay, what does it do instead?
Instead, the 12th house from the sun acts as the foundational background of the ego. It creates a protective, prosperous backing.
So if Vesi Yoga is the herald walking in front of the king, announcing him to the public, Vasi Yoga operates like the trusted advisor.
Yes.
The person standing in the shadows behind the throne, whispering in the king's ear. Because being a favorite of the ruling classes implies a level of behind-the-scenes influence.
Exactly. You aren't necessarily the one wearing the crown, but you have the ear of the person who does.
The 12th house from the sun represents what backs you up, your hidden reserves, the unconscious support system of your ego.
And benefics here act like a secret safety net. They are the quiet benefactors, the unseen forces that ensure the king remains prosperous and favored.
It's a quiet power.
Right, rooted in strategy and alliances, as opposed to the loud public announcement of Vesi.
Okay, so we have the herald in front and the whispering advisor in back. What happens if the king has both simultaneously?
Then you have Obhayachari Yoga, or Obhayachari Yoga.
The surrounded sun.
Exactly. Obhayachari Yoga occurs when planets, again, excluding the moon and the nodes, are present on both sides of the sun simultaneously.
So you have planets in both the 2nd and the 12th houses from the sun.
The sun is completely hemmed in.
If you have benefics on both sides, what does the text say happens?
The results outlined in the text are highly impressive. It states that the person will be an eloquent speaker, have well-proportioned limbs, take delight in everything, be liked by all, wealthy and famous.
Take delight in everything. That phrase really stands out to me.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It sounds like a description of someone who is fundamentally at peace with themselves and their place in the world.
It reflects a profound psychological equilibrium. And that brings us to the deepest analytical point the text makes about this entire sequence of solar yogas.
Okay, where it gets really interesting.
Yes. The source explicitly states that these three yogas, Vesi, Vasi, and Obhayachari, are the primary indicators of the ego development of the individual.
Let's look under the hood of that idea. Because in modern psychology, ego often has a negative connotation.
Right. We call people egotistical or egomaniacs.
It implies selfishness. But here, the text seems to use ego to mean something more structural.
In classical thought, the ego isn't about arrogance. It is your core sense of self, your individuated identity, your personal presence, and, well, your gravity in a room.
It's how you separate I from other.
Precisely. And the text makes a careful distinction here. It states that while these solar yogas are wonderful for personal development, they cannot be compared in eminence to massive political Raja yogas.
Remind us what a Raja Yoga is.
Raja yogas are planetary combinations that grant literal kingship, sweeping political power, or massive historical significance.
So an Obhayachari Yoga won't necessarily make you the president or a billionaire CEO.
Not on its own, no. They map the individual's personal presence and material comfort. You might be the most well-adjusted, delighted, and well-liked person in your neighborhood, but you aren't running the country.
But the text notes that sometimes these solar yogas merge into more important yogas, right? Like Dana, which means wealth, or Raja, which means power.
Yes, they absolutely can merge.
So how does that merger actually work mechanically?
Well, if a planet causing your Obhayachari Yoga, let's say Jupiter, is also simultaneously the ruler of your 10th house of career and is sitting in a powerfully angular house,
Then suddenly that ego development is thrust onto a global stage.
exactly. The astrologer must deeply analyze the overarching combinations because the solar yoga might just be a modifying factor, a very pleasant foundational support of a much larger, more public destiny.
So what does this all mean for the listener? If these yogas govern ego development, we have to look at the dark side.
Okay, let's go there.
What if it goes wrong? Does an afflicted Obhayachari Yoga say you have a mathematically strong Saturn on one side of the sun and a strong Mars on the other mean someone has a fragile, easily shattered ego? Or does it mean they just have an unlikable, abrasive one?
If we follow the psychological logic of the text, an afflicted Obhayachari where the sun is hemmed in by harsh, malefic planets would indicate a highly defensive, embattled sense of self.
The ego is literally under siege.
Yes. Instead of taking delight in everything and being liked by all, the person subconsciously feels constantly threatened.
And that leads to a harsh or abrasive outward personality as a defense mechanism.
Exactly. The herald is shouting insults to keep people away, and the advisor is whispering paranoia into the king's ear.
The core self feels it must fight just to survive.
Right. Their solar gravity is warping under the immense pressure of those surrounding malefic planets. It explains a lot of seemingly irrational, defensive human behavior when you view it through this structural lens.
Wow. Okay, so if Obhayachari shapes the internal ego, is there a combination that shapes how the outside world physically perceives that royal solar energy?
There is.
How do you get that literal king-like aura? That brings us to Rajalakshana Yoga. Following the exact sequence requested in our source, Raja meaning king, and Lakshana meaning marks or qualities, the royal mark.
The mechanical condition for this yoga is highly specific and statistically very rare.
Okay, lay on us.
Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon must all be situated either in the ascendant, the first house, or placed in a Kendra.
Okay, if you were looking at your own chart right now, let's define a Kendra. Kendras are the quadrants of the chart, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses.
Right. Geometrically, they are the angles of maximum angular momentum and visibility. They are the structural pillars of a horoscope.
They represent the self, the home, the partner, and the career, the most active, visible areas of human life.
Yes. And for this yoga, you need the 4 classic benefic planets, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, all occupying these pillar houses simultaneously.
If you manage to hit that cosmic jackpot, what are the predictive effects?
The text states that the native will possess an attractive appearance and be endowed with all the good qualities of high personages.
So you look great and you act like royalty.
Pretty much.
But knowing the rigorous mathematics of this text, there has to be a catch. It can't just be that simple.
There is a strict textual caveat. The text notes that a weak moon or a badly associated Mercury completely strips the person of this beautiful appearance.
So if the moon is waning and dark, lacking physical light,
Or if Mercury is conjunct a malefic like Saturn, the aesthetic blessings of the yoga are completely nullified, even if they are sitting perfectly in the Kendras.
wow, a weak planet simply cannot deliver the goods.
It cannot. It's unforgiving, but mechanically consistent.
This raises an important question, though. Do you have to be literal royalty to have this yoga? Because not all of us are in line for a throne.
The text actually anticipates that exact question and explicitly clarifies no. One need not necessarily be a king to inherit these virtues.
And it gives a wonderfully dry philosophical reason why, doesn't it?
It does. It says, because all kings are not virtuous.
I love that. A little bit of ancient political commentary woven right into the astronomy.
It's true, you can be born into a royal family and be a terrible person lacking any regal qualities.
So instead of literal kingship, what does it give?
It contributes a concept called adrishta, which translates to unseen luck or fortune. It gives the person strokes of luck, respect, dignity, and a magnetic personality that many covet but few possess.
It sounds like this yoga is the ultimate it factor or charisma combination.
Yeah.
It's that person who walks into a room and everyone just naturally defers to them, even if they're wearing sweatpants. But let me challenge the reality of this. Since it requires 4 specific planets in 4 specific angles, how rare is it to get this perfectly unblemished?
It is exceptionally rare to find it perfectly unblemished. Think about the astronomical reality here. Venus and Mercury travel very close to the sun, so they are almost always in the same or adjacent signs.
Right.
So getting them spread out across the Kendras alongside Jupiter and the Moon without any malefic interference from Mars or Saturn, it's a statistical anomaly.
Which perfectly mirrors reality. True, unblemished charisma and universal respect, that pure it factor, is equally rare in the real world.
Most people have a modified version, a glimpse of that royal mark, but not the full crown.
Okay, let's bring our focus back directly to the sun itself. We have looked at its neighbors and the angles around it. Now we must look at what happens when a planet occupies the exact same house as the sun.
This leads to a very famous combination, Budha-Aditya Yoga.
Buddha means Mercury, and Aditya is a classical name for the sun. So Budha-Aditya Yoga is formed when Mercury combines with the sun in the exact same house. The mind and the soul combining.
Yes.
What does the text say happens when these two merge?
The text lists the following results. The native will be highly intelligent, skillful in all works, possess a good reputation, command personal respect, and be surrounded by comforts and happiness.
That sounds like the ideal combination for a successful intellectual or business leader.
It's very good for that, yes.
But we have to talk about the physical realities of the solar system here. What happens when something gets too close to a star?
It burns.
Exactly.
And the text highlights a critical astronomical and astrological rule here, the rule of combustion, or asta. Generally, any planet that comes into close physical association with the sun becomes combust. It gets swallowed by the sun's immense glare and intense heat.
So in astrological mechanics, this means the planet loses its power to do good.
Yes, its positive significations are burned up by the sun's overwhelming gravity and radiation.
So if Venus gets too close, the aesthetic and relational qualities of Venus get scorched.
And if Jupiter gets too close, the expansive luck dries up.
That is the general principle for almost every planet. However, Mercury is an exception to this rule.
Right. Astronomically, Mercury is the closest planet to the sun anyway. It is used to the heat.
Astrologically, it is the messenger, used to being right next to the king.
Exactly. The text states that Mercury does not automatically lose its power when conjunct to the sun, but with a massive, highly specific caveat.
What is the boundary line?
The text insists that Mercury should not be within 10 degrees of the sun to give rise to the Budha-Aditya Yoga.
Okay, 10 degrees.
If it gets closer than 10 degrees, the heat is simply too much even for Mercury. The yoga is destroyed, and Mercury's intellectual gifts are compromised.
Let's map that psychologically.
Yeah.
Mercury represents the intellect, the logical mind, calculation, and communication.
Nah.
The sun represents the core self, the ego, the soul. If getting closer than 10 degrees destroys the yoga, does that mean the ego literally burns up the intellect? Like, is this the astrological signature of someone who is just too arrogant to think clearly?
That's a profound way to look at it.
Someone who cannot hear outside logic because their own sense of self is blinding them.
Yes, when the ego, the sun, is too closely identified with the intellect, Mercury, the person cannot separate their ideas from their identity.
So if you attack their idea,
They don't see it as a debate. They see it as a personal attack on their very existence. They lose all objectivity.
the intellect is no longer a tool for exploring the world. It becomes a defensive weapon solely used to protect the ego.
They become too arrogant to think clearly.
But if Mercury is safely 11 or 12 degrees away,
Then the intellect serves the ego brilliantly without being consumed by it. It's the difference between a brilliant advisor who serves the king effectively and an advisor who is so terrified of the king they just tell him whatever he wants to hear to survive.
that is the true Budha-Aditya brilliance. The mind is illuminated by the soul, but maintains enough distance to remain objective.
Exactly.
We have covered the heralds, the backroom advisors, the royal marks, and the burning intellects. Now, I want to explore a very specific scenario regarding the ubiquity of these solar yogas.
Okay.
What if the sun is just completely isolated? What if there are literally NO planets in the 2nd and 12th houses from the sun, except maybe the moon, Rahu, or P2, which we know don't count?
The empty sun phenomenon.
Yeah. What happens to our Vesi, Vasi, and Obhayachari Yogas then? Do they just vanish.
That is a mathematically fascinating scenario, and the text explains a fundamental astronomical reality that answers your question. Because Mercury is the planet physically closest to the Sun, it has a very limited orbit from our perspective here on Earth.
Right.
Mercury is always confined within a certain maximum elongation from the Sun. It can never get further than about 28 degrees away in the sky.
So astronomically, you will never look up at night and see Mercury opposite the Sun. It's always riding shotgun.
Because of this inescapable physical reality, Mercury will almost always be in the same sign as the Sun, the sign immediately behind it in the 12th house, or the sign immediately in front of it in the 2nd house.
I see where this is going.
Therefore, the text points out, either Vesi Yoga or Vasi Yoga will invariably be present in almost every single horoscope ever cast, simply because Mercury has to be somewhere nearby.
That means almost everyone on Earth has either a herald or a whispering advisor. These aren't rare elite yogas, they are foundational building blocks of the human ego.
Almost everyone. The only exception the text notes, the true empty sun phenomenon, is highly specific.
When does it happen?
It occurs if the sun is at the very, very end of a sign, say 29 degrees of Aries, and Mercury has attained its absolute greatest elongation in the opposite direction.
Pushing it just far enough away to slip into the 3rd house or the 11th house from the Sun.
Exactly. The sun has to be at the absolute edge of town, and Mercury has to be running as fast as it possibly can in the other direction.
Therefore, a true absence of planets around the Sun is incredibly rare and is specifically tied to Mercury's maximum orbital stretch.
When it does happen, the person lacks that immediate ego support system we discussed earlier.
The psychology of the lone wolf. They lack both the herald to announce them and the advisor to protect them. Their ego has to operate entirely independently of immediate resources or hidden safety nets.
It's a very challenging but very independent placement.
Okay, to complete our deep dive on the Sun, there are several other sun-centric yogas mentioned in the text that expand the Sun's influence beyond just its immediate neighbors. Let's rapidly but thoroughly explore those mechanics.
Okay, starting with Mahabhagya Yoga.
Mahabhagya translates to the fortune yoga, right?
Yes, the conditions for this are entirely dependent on your gender and the time of day you were born.
Okay, walk us through it.
If a man is born during the day, the sun, the moon, and the ascendant must all be in odd signs, like Aries, Gemini, or Leo.
And for a woman?
For a woman born at night, the sun, the moon, and the ascendant must all be in even signs, like Taurus, Cancer, or Virgo.
That is incredibly symmetrical. What are the results of this alignment?
The text says the person will have good character, be generous, famous, and long-lived. The fascinating philosophical note here is that the text states the ascendant represents the body, the sun represents the soul, and the moon represents the mind.
Together, they form the tripod of life.
Exactly.
If you balance a tripod perfectly, it can hold an immense amount of weight.
And when all three of these core pillars align with the polarity of the birth, masculine, expansive, odd energy for day-born men, and feminine, receptive, even energy for night-born women, the tripod is perfectly balanced.
The body, mind, and soul are not fighting each other.
They are in total harmonic resonance with the time of birth, resulting in extreme good fortune.
What an elegant concept. Next is Bhaskara Yoga.
This is a very specific geometric chain of planets. Mercury must be in the 2nd house from the sun.
Okay, that's step 1.
Then the moon must be in the 11th house from Mercury.
Step 2.
And finally, Jupiter must be in the 5th or 9th house from the moon.
That is a highly specific celestial conga line. What is the outcome of this chain?
If you have that precise chain, you will be wealthy, valorous, aristocratic, and notably learned in sciences and music.
Why sciences and music specifically? That's an interesting combo.
Look at the planets involved. You have the sun, which is the soul, feeding Mercury, the intellect and science, which feeds the moon, emotion and art, which is supported by Jupiter, higher knowledge.
The interplay of Mercury's rigid intellect and the moon's fluid art, all anchored by the sun, creates a Renaissance individual.
Exactly. The left and right brain are linked in a continuous circuit.
What's next on the list?
We have Marud Yoga. The primary condition is that the sun must be in a Kendra, one of those pillar houses we discussed from the moon, with some additional conditions regarding Jupiter and Venus being in trines to each other.
Okay, and the results?
The results are that the person will be a good conversationalist, rich, successful, and the text specifically notes they will have a protruding belly.
A protruding belly. Wait, really?
Yes, explicitly stated.
Why would an ancient astronomical text include such a hyper-specific physical marker alongside psychological traits like being a good conversationalist?
Ancient astrological texts view the human body as a reflection of the cosmos. Jupiter and Venus are planets of expansion, luxury, and comfort.
Oh, I see.
When they are powerfully aligned with the sun and moon, the individual experiences immense material success. Historically, wealth and success led to a love of rich foods and a more sedentary, comfortable lifestyle, directly resulting in a protruding belly.
It is a physical manifestation of an astrological reality, a sign of a comfortable, prosperous life free from hard physical
A
labor.
literal fat cat.
The physical metabolism is mirroring the expansive astrological elements. How does that contrast with Ravi Yoga?
Ravi Yoga occurs when the sun is in the 10th house of career and the lord of the 10th house is sitting in the 3rd house alongside Saturn.
Okay, Saturn is the planet of restriction, discipline, and minimalism. How did that change the outcome?
The text says this person will be respected by rulers, well-versed in sciences, passionate, and in direct contrast to Marud Yoga, they will love simple food.
Because Saturn restricts the expansion. The sun in the 10th gives them immense public respect and passion, but Saturn's influence on the career lord grounds them.
Right. They might be a brilliant scientist or a respected leader, but they are happy eating a bowl of plain rice at their desk. They don't need the luxury of Venus and Jupiter.
That's fascinating. What's the final one?
The final major solar combination is Rajalakshana Yoga. This happens when the sun, the moon, and Mars are in trines to each other.
Trines mean they are exactly 120 degrees apart, right? Forming a perfect equilateral triangle in the chart.
Yes, a triangle of the soul, which is the sun, the mind, the moon, and action, Mars.
Why is a 120-degree angle so significant?
In geometry and architecture, a 120-degree angle distributes weight perfectly. It is the most stable structure. Astrologically, planets in trine do not create friction. They support each other continuously. The text says the results are great wealth, being a terror to enemies, highly intelligent, and having good longevity.
It specifically notes this creates a smooth career, which makes sense mechanically. If your soul's desire, your emotional needs, and your physical actions are at a perfect 120-degree lockstep, they aren't grinding against each other.
They are turning like perfectly oiled gears. You don't self-sabotage, which makes your path forward incredibly smooth.
Hearing all of these detailed combinations, the core takeaway for you, the listener, must remain grounded in that foundational rule we started with.
Absolutely. A yoga's mere presence on paper isn't enough.
Just because you have the sun, moon, and Mars in a triangle doesn't mean you automatically get a frictionless career.
It is the mathematical strength of the planets, their placement in friendly or enemy signs, their point values based on your specific ascendant that dictates whether you get the full Maharaja effect or just a slight, barely noticeable bump in luck.
It is the difference between potential and kinetic energy. The yoga provides the geometric potential, the mathematical strength provides the kinetic force to make it a reality in your daily life.
Well said.
We have been on an incredibly dark journey today. We started by looking at how predictive astrology treats the sun not just as a light in the sky, but as the absolute gravitational center of the ego.
It really changes how you look at a chart.
It does. We explored the heralds of Vesi Yoga walking before the king and the hidden whispering advisors of Vasi Yoga protecting him from behind. We looked at what happens when the sun is completely surrounded in Obhayachari Yoga, mapping the very development of the ego and whether that ego is healthy or embattled.
And we examined the rare, unblemished charisma of the Rajalakshana royal mark.
And the delicate, dangerous balance required when the mind and soul combine in Budha-Aditya Yoga, where getting too close means the ego literally burns up the intellect.
That 10-degree rule is crucial.
And we wrapped up by realizing that because of Mercury's tight physical orbit, these solar yogas are ubiquitous, conditioning the lives of almost everyone on Earth alongside the balanced tripod of Mahabhagya and the smooth geometric paths of Rajalakshana.
It's an intricate, beautiful system.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We started by talking about gravity, about a heavy bowling ball warping the trampoline, dictating where the smaller marbles naturally roll.
Right.
The text tells us that these solar yogas map the development of our very ego, our deepest sense of self, and our material success in the world. But if our ego, our most intimate sense of I, is predictably shaped by whether a ball of rock named Mercury was 11 degrees away from the sun instead of 9 degrees at the exact mathematical moment of our birth.
It's a big question.
Where exactly does our free will begin and where does the solar system end? Think about that the next time you feel a surge of unearned confidence or unexplained luck.